Greetings, Healthy Voice listeners. I hope that this message finds you well and that you've been having an interesting week, hopefully a pleasant one. And if not, I hope that listening to this podcast will help bring some balance to your feeling state. I always find that learning new information or hearing new ideas kind of brings me back into balance. So I hope I can at least inspire some ideas for you. So today I want to talk about the nervous system. I want to talk about caring for the nervous system and why we need to protect it, why we should think about the nervous system the way we treat the cardiovascular system. And what I mean by that is in terms of wellness. We all know, we have all been hearing for our entire lives that doing cardio exercise is important. It's important to keep the heart and the lungs healthy because we know that there are serious consequences in the long run if we do not take care of our cardiovascular system. And so even if some of us don't exercise, we know that we should. Everybody seems to have a basic understanding of this. We also seem to have a pretty good understanding of how to take care of the muscular system. At this point in time, everybody knows that you should be doing some kind of weight training, some kind of resistance activity, even if it's just yoga. You don't have to do it with weights. You can use your own body for resistance training. And again, even if you don't do it, everybody knows how important this is, especially as we get older. But we don't talk about the nervous system in the same way. And in my opinion, we are currently living through a time, I would actually be so bold to say revolutionary time. We have been living in a revolutionary period. And what I mean by that is a period of in betweenness, a period that bridges the past into the future. And if you are a history lover, a history student like myself, then you know that no revolution is quick. It's difficult and challenging, sometimes painful. It's shocking to everybody, regardless of which side of the revolution you happen to find yourself on. It's very difficult, but the revolutions are the only way that we can even get from one point in history to the next. And so, like it or not, I'm not really stating an opinion here. I'm just seeing it through the eyes of a sociology student and a history lover. I'm seeing that we've been living in a revolutionary period for quite a few years now. I started really feeling it like hardcore during the lockdowns, during the pandemic. It was very clear to me. It was very weird and surreal and very nerve wracking, which brings me, of course, to the topic of the nervous system. It's so essential that we learn as much as we can about the nervous system and how to protect it. And I feel comfortable talking about this because while I am not a doctor, and that is your disclaimer for the podcast, I am a voice teacher, and singing is one of the best ways to strengthen and protect your nervous system. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. But first, I want to talk about what is the nervous system? I don't know if everybody has really thought about it. Certainly, everybody knows what it means to feel nervous. They understand what it means to have nerves. Many people have pinched nerves and they understand how physically painful nervous damage can be. But most of the time, I don't think most people even think about it. And so, if you try to picture what it looks like in the body, when I try to picture it, I see wires. I see so many roads traveling throughout the body with electrical currents surging through. And that's already a very strange picture, in my opinion. It's not the same thing as seeing pathways of muscle. Muscle is something I was a little bit more trained on when I was in massage school, but the nervous system is something I've had to learn on my own through books and lectures and personal experience. So I'm going to share very briefly a little bit of my own personal experience of, well, I'll just call them symptoms of trauma and perhaps even symptoms of post-traumatic trauma. So like I said, it was during the lockdowns, during the pandemic, when I really became very clear that we were living through a revolutionary period where it was almost like, to me, I was experiencing it as a state of limbo. That's how I would have described it. And it was an extremely surreal experience I did not enjoy it. I found it fascinating to be part of the experience. Like I said, I am a student of history, sociology, psychology, and I found it quite fascinating and maybe a little thrilling as I thought about my future self being able to reflect back on that moment. Being a mature human being with lots of life experience at that point, I knew that I would be able to look back and say, hey, I was there when that moment occurred. But I remember it being very unsettling. I did not like it at all. And the shock of what was happening outside of my life, yeah, that bothered me, that triggered me, especially regarding my students, my relationship with my students, which they were all children at that point. I was still teaching children piano lessons. We switched to the online format, which was actually amazing for me. I had been wanting to have an online business for many years. And so in that respect, I felt like my life got an upgrade. But that wasn't enough to keep me steady, and so I remember one of the first thoughts that went through my mind when the lockdowns were announced. I immediately thought of my students who, I have to say, the population of children I was teaching had been living a charmed life from birth. They all had parents who were deeply committed to their upbringing, financially healthy, so that they could basically go to the nicest schools, the nicest summer camps. They could have lots of after school activities like piano lessons and other things. They had nice friends who had good manners. They went to schools that had no bullying policies. And so these kids were, I would say, very privileged. And I mean that just literally. I'm not trying to be derogatory in any way. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, this is going to be so hard on these kids. And it flashed me back to my own childhood. It flashed. And then I started thinking about other kids that were not like my piano students, kids who were not privileged, kids who maybe had problems at home. And perhaps school was maybe the only chance they got to escape from that type of environment, which is, I would say, I could relate to that experience. And I think that's why it sent me down a spiral of panic attacks and flashbacks. And so my nervous system was in a, I would say, like a state of collapse. These moments of panic would last for a long time, around an hour at least. And then the crash that would happen afterwards was sort of like a depression. And so sometimes I would even have to I would have to call in. I would have to cancel my lessons because I would be so depleted of energy. So energy is a part of the nervous system. Energy, you think of electricity, you think of energy. The nervous system is a series of electrical highways running through your body and producing all these electrical currents. And so you think about going into a panic attack, and it's like all of your wires are just being cranked up to 11, so to speak. And so you're running the risk of, I think of a light that's maybe, it's been on for too long and it burns out. It just stops working. The current stops working. And so that's what I think of when I think back to these panic attacks. Was it's like all my electrical currents were being cranked up really, really high until they just burned out. And then it would feel like I didn't have any energy afterwards. I would be lethargic and depleted. My mind would be so foggy, and I wouldn't be of any use to anybody. And so the only thing I could do was just get through the rest of the day. And so I would typically do that by getting into bed and watching movies. There was nothing else I could do. I would just kind of like, I would sometimes compare it to being on a long flight where it's just, what can you do? You're on a plane. You just watch movies. You just wait till you get to your destination. So this is when I started getting really serious about trying to understand what is the nervous system and how do we keep it healthy. I have done so many different things. I have done all the practices to keep my nervous system healthy, like consistent exercise is possibly the most important thing you can do to keep your nervous system healthy. Breath work type practices, whether it's a breath centered meditation or something we actually do call breath work or pranayama in yoga, or a singing practice, which does both singing and breath work. These things are very, very helpful. There's also the question of nutrition, which I became very interested in. I was already quite deep into the nutrition world when this started happening. I was actually in the middle of a year-long nutrition program focusing on raw plant food nutrition. Nothing in that course talked to me about the nervous system or even hormones or anything that would be related to a stress response. And so I had to dig to find books on the topic of nutrition and mental health or nutrition and the nervous system. And let me tell you, it was almost impossible. All of the books I found were old. They were old books, like 1970s, 1980s. And so I couldn't even be sure if all of the information was relevant. But I did learn quite a bit. And here's one thing I can say from my experience and my research that you can reflect on and consider when it comes to diet. So settle in because this might take a few minutes for me to explain. The way the body works when it processes food is that the very first thing that happens is it starts digesting the food. Digestion takes a lot of energy. So there's that word energy again. So we're talking about the nervous system when we're talking about energy. Energy, so much energy is needed to digest food. So let's zoom out for a moment and let's imagine what this looks like. One of the reasons I became interested in sticking to a raw food diet is my skin cleared up. My hair had this vibrancy that I had never seen before. One of the things I learned in my research is that the only way your body can prioritize something like clear and glowing skin, strong and healthy nails, shiny, strong hair is if there's energy left over. What I mean by that is your body prioritizes digestion above every other process in the body. If your body cannot process the food you eat, then that's the first problem the body must take care of. When you digest your food very easily, you also have extra energy for life. You have energy to have a clear mind. And I have found that paying attention to diet has really helped with nervous system regulation. So let's continue talking about the nervous system and how to protect it, especially moving forward in this extremely volatile world where I don't see things getting any easier in general. It seems like life continues to get more expensive. There's more pressure to keep up, where a lot of us are having to work harder in order to maintain a certain lifestyle, even if that lifestyle is just having enough food to eat every single day, having enough gas in your car. And then on top of that, there's all this media that's just constantly bombarding us. Even when you leave the house, I mean, depending on where you live, I'm in a city where I'm bombarded with advertisements everywhere I go. Whether it's on these, now they're on Waymos. I don't know, not all of you have Waymos, these like self-driving cars. We have them all over the city, and now they have advertisements on them. So I see advertisements, I see billboards rolling through my neighborhood constantly. It's crazy. It's too much. We're being bombarded with information constantly. And so how do we protect our nervous system? I would definitely repeat that taking care of your digestion is number one, because if you are not digesting your food properly, it's one of the most stressful feelings, and you don't realize it until your digestion clears up and you finally go, "Oh my gosh, I have so much energy." And so I'd like to give a few tips on what to do nutritionally to protect your nervous system. Keep doing the breath work and the exercise. Exercise is so important. Don't listen to people who tell you too much exercise will make you fat, the cortisol. Like, it's very hard. If you are the kind of person who's exercising too much, you're the exception, okay? The majority of us are not at risk for exercising too much. The majority of us are not exercising enough. So you have to prioritize movement. You can do that by taking a long walk every day or walks throughout the day. I love doing the walk and talk journaling. That way you're using your voice, you're pushing your respiratory system to work harder. and you're getting the benefits of walking, the benefits for your mind and for your body. It's also very calming to the nervous system. Weight resistance is really good for anxious people. I find, as somebody who's a naturally very high strung, who is prone to anxiety attacks and panic, and my problem is running too high on the energy, which pushes you into the anxiety territory. And so for people who are in that more high strung category, you need a lot of physical exertion in order to balance things out. So weight training of any kind, but I would recommend that you don't do anything too strenuous, because if you were to start like lifting heavy weights, you could run the risk of causing more tension in your throat. But body resistance, doing weight resistance that doesn't strain your neck muscles, this is so helpful for people with a high strung nervous system. Also, intense cardio sessions. So, running, don't rely on walking all the time. Walking is great, and I'm a fan of walking every single day, but I have to get out there and run at least twice a week in order to stay balanced. And recently, I even started, I don't do this every time, maybe once a week I do this. I started wearing a weighted vest because I felt like, even though running is hard and I don't feel like I'm a pro in any way, I still felt like my body needs more pressure and more resistance to keep me balanced, to keep me from going over that edge of panic. I need to have physical pressure on my body. And so I run with a weighted vest now once a week. And it's very hard, but very rewarding. And I feel exhausted afterwards in a good way. So, when it comes to nutrition, the way you can keep your digestive system running smoothly and easily is to make sure you're hydrated. Make sure you're drinking a lot of water, but make sure you're not eating foods that pull water stores from your body. See, your digestive system needs water to work efficiently. And so, if you are not adequately hydrated, your digestive system is going to pull from your existing water stores in order to assist the digestion process. And this is going to dehydrate you. Another thing that can cause your body to become dehydrated is by eating foods that don't contain enough water in them. So, for example, French fries. French fries are deep fried potatoes. I don't know how much water is left in a deep fried potato stick. I have to imagine it's something around like less than 5, maybe even less than that, maybe 1%. I don't know, compared to a boiled potato. So you can imagine these two scenarios, and you can imagine and see for yourself, a boiled potato still contains water in it. And so you eat a French fry or you eat a potato, which one's easier for your digestive system to process? It's obvious that the boiled potato is easier to digest. And so that's what I mean by water content. Even foods that I don't necessarily think are healthy foods, like pasta, pasta contains a lot of water. Think about it. It starts out completely dry, no water. Then you put it in a pot of boiling water and it absorbs all this water, and that's how it becomes the texture that we love. And so pasta is actually pretty easy to digest, even though it is made from wheat, and wheat can be troublesome for the digestive system. The way you can think about wheat being a problem is you think about the way sometimes kids, when they were children in elementary school, we would make a homemade paste, a homemade glue, and you would do that by mixing flour and water together. And so it creates this paste, this glue. And so you can imagine that that's what's happening in your body. So even though I would say pasta is probably less harmful than a loaf of bread, which contains no water at all, it's still wheat. So I try to limit that to like every now and then kind of treat. So foods that contain naturally high amounts of water are raw fruits, especially like watermelon, cantaloupe, berries, citrus fruits, and even vegetables, uncooked vegetables like spinach, garlic, onion, even carrots and the harder vegetables. Zucchini has a super high amount of water. But if you don't want to eat raw vegetables, that's okay, because lightly steaming vegetables can actually add more water to them than when they were in their raw state. And lightly steaming the vegetables doesn't take away much of the nutrients at all. And they can be easier to digest for a lot of people. A lot of people have trouble digesting raw foods, although I will say you get used to it after a while. But yeah, that can be really hard. And so the whole idea here is to talk about the nervous system is happier when your digestive system is running efficiently. And so we want to try to do things that will protect the nervous system. So let's talk about foods that can dehydrate you, certain specific items that we all love. But if you are somebody who has a tendency towards depression, anxiety, panic attacks, flashbacks, then you understand that I am the kind of person who I will do anything to protect my mental health. And if that means giving up coffee, then so be it. And so that's the first one I want to talk about because this is the hardest one for a lot of people. I one time the first time I gave up coffee for health reasons, it was during that era when I had high blood pressure. And I went to the doctor to report what I had done differently because she was amazed that my blood pressure was normal after only 30 days. And I explained to her that I had done the raw vegan thing, I started running, and then I gave up coffee. And to that, she responded, "Ugh, I'd rather take a pill than quit coffee." And I laughed, but at the same time, I thought, that's sad. I wouldn't, I can't imagine ever thinking like that because these pills have side effects and coffee has side effects. Coffee is dehydrating. Number one, it's dehydrating. So it can have long term consequences on your digestive system. I know that sounds counterintuitive because, in a lot of ways, coffee stimulates the digestive system immediately, but in the long run, it is dehydrating you. And so it's causing problems to your overall health and can have a negative effect on the voice. On top of that, the caffeine level in coffee is so high. Even in decaffeinated coffee, there's a pretty good amount of caffeine. And this triggers an intense response in your nervous system. This spikes your cortisol levels. This throws your hormones all out of whack. And if you are prone to anxiety attacks, you should really think twice about keeping coffee in your life. I know it's a really, really hard substance to let go of. I love coffee. I love everything about it. I love the ritual. I love the way it inspires me in my writing, but I recently decided to give it up. It's been about 3.5 weeks. I'm completely free of the addiction. And so I'm still getting used to it, but I'm free of the addiction and I'm starting to really feel the benefits. I'm definitely more hydrated. My voice feels so much better since I stopped. My congestion has gone down. I was having some extreme congestion problems, and I wake up with a clear sinuses every morning now, which is so liberating. That is worth giving up coffee to me. Another thing about coffee is the acid levels. A lot of singers will struggle with acid reflux. This wreaks havoc on your voice. You don't want to mess around with that. So think about that. You can switch to green tea, although green tea still has caffeine. Even black tea is better for you than coffee, but it does have caffeine. So again, if you are somebody prone to panic and anxiety and depression, I don't really think you want to be messing around with any of these substances. My favorite substitute so far is rooibos tea. It's spelled Rooibos. It's from South Africa. It's a red leaf tea, no caffeine, and it's fermented. The leaves are fermented, which means it has a similar kind of flavor notes to black tea. It's not black tea, okay? But it's got a similar profile. And so it's been very helpful for me switching over to that. So, some of the other foods that can wreak havoc on your digestive system as well as dehydrate you are fried foods of any kind, whether it's packaged and processed foods like potato chips or french fries or deep fried anything. That is going to dehydrate you very quickly. And you might think, well, I'll just drink a lot of water. Yeah, but you really have to drink a lot of water to make up for it. And I know in my experience, whenever I've gone to a restaurant and I've eaten french fries or whatever, I just kind of like have a total cheat day. I'm not drinking a bunch of water to make up for it. Come on. So let's just be realistic, okay? So fried foods, not a good idea. If that's bumming you out, try to substitute it with something like with a similar flavor profile that you like. So for example, one of the things that's so appealing about fried food is that it's really salty. And so you can eat something like steamed vegetables with a nice, flavorful, salty dressing. Or instead of french fries, you can eat boiled potatoes with some olive oil and salt. There you go. Nothing wrong with that. Your taste buds are going to get the similar hit that they were looking for, but without that dehydrating, waterless makeup of the food. Another thing that can be difficult for the singer and for the digestive system, and I don't, I would say I would say dehydrating as well, because what it does to the congesting of the sinuses is dairy foods. Dairy foods cause a lot of digestive troubles for a lot of people. It can be really mucus forming, which usually an excess of mucus is a sign of a dehydrated body. So if you find yourself clearing your throat a lot, like for me, I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but whenever I would drink coffee in the morning, I would be clearing my throat for about an hour afterwards. And what I've learned is that this is because the body is dehydrated. And so it's almost trying to overcompensate by developing like an overabundance of mucus production. And that is what dairy does. So that's another thing that is something you want to be mindful of. Basically, anything that you cook in an oven is going to become very, very dry. The healthiest cooking methods for somebody who is trying to be conscious of their hydration levels and their digestive system in order to have a healthy nervous system is steaming and simmering. So, as in making a soup of some kind. Steaming and simmering keep the water content high. And that's what you want. And they also don't take away from so much of the nutrients. They keep a lot of the nutrients intact, which nutrition is something that is worth looking into when it comes to a compromised nervous system. We need a lot of B vitamins. And I'm a big fan of supplementing, especially whenever you have a health concern that you're trying to treat naturally. Why not supplement? I know some people are really weird about it and they think, oh, I should get all my nutrients from my food. Well, that's really hard to do because you'd have to eat so much food every day in order to get all the nutrients you need in an abundant amount. And so, if you have a health issue like a compromised nervous system, then why not take some supplements that might help? And a B complex supplement can be so helpful for that. And there are other supplements called adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogens are herbs that work with the nervous system to basically balance it out. And so the idea behind adaptogens is if your nervous system is going to the extreme fear-based stress levels, then it will help to calm down the nervous system. If you're going in the opposite direction into feelings of lethargy, you're moving really slow, you don't have a lot of energy, then it will energize you. My favorite adaptogens so far have been cacao. I love cacao, lion's mane, and ashwagandha. But read up on ashwagandha because it's got some controversy and it may not be for everybody. And then finally, you have to make sure you're drinking a lot of water. And if you don't like water, herbal iced tea is a great substitute. You can make a big pot of it in the morning and drink it throughout the day over ice. I love peppermint herbal iced tea. I'll put a dropper full of stevia in my teapot so that I'm not consuming any sugar. That's the other thing when it comes to the nervous system. Sugar. Sugar is a drug. Sugar is the most widely used drug on the planet. It's probably the most popular drug of all of humanity. And we feed it to children. It's like I've heard it called the crack cocaine for kids. They get hooked on this stuff when they're very little. They turn into little drug fiends around sugar. And it's not just them, it's everybody. Sugar is highly addictive. And if you don't believe me, just try to quit it for one day, for 2 days. If you're somebody who eats dessert every single night after dinner, you just try to avoid it tonight. And tell me how easy it is. It's very, very difficult. Of all the things I've ever quit in my life, sugar has to be the hardest thing I've ever, and I've given up so many things. I haven't been a meat eater since I was a teenager. I eat mostly raw food. I don't even eat that much cooked food. Can you believe that? It was easier for me to give up cooked food than sugar. I still remember I was doing some kind of thing called like a candida fast or something to see if I had any food allergies. And that was the first time in my life I ever gave up sugar. And I did it for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, it was hard. For 2 weeks, it did not get easy. That's when I knew that sugar is absolutely an addiction, addictive substance. And so sugar, if any addiction, any addictive substance wreaks havoc on your nervous system. It spikes your hormones. You go up and down, crash, you get really, really high, and then you get really, really low, and it wreaks havoc. So if you have a tendency towards a dysregulated nervous system, get rid of the sugar. Some really good substitutes are, I love stevia for liquids. So for my tea, I use liquid stevia. The powdery stuff is not good in my opinion, although some people like it. For powdery substitute, I use monk fruit. Is amazing. It tastes like brown sugar. You have to use more of it than you would with regular sugar, but it's sugar free. There's no sugar in it. It's just naturally sweet. It's amazing. And then there's also date paste. If you're somebody who likes to make things that need like a liquid sweetener, but you don't want to use stevia because it's got a weird taste in some ways. You can take dates and soak them and make sure you remove the pits. Soak them for a few hours, and then you put them in a blender with just a little bit of the soak water, the date water, and then you get this amazing paste that you can use in all kinds of recipes. It's really good. And yeah, you don't have to have sugar in your life. And there are lots of other substitutes that I'm not even thinking about right now. And I haven't talked about animal products. I haven't talked about meat. You guys know where I stand on that. It can be highly acidic and slower digesting than plant foods and high water content. It's really about high water content and how acidic the foods are. Because if you can't digest properly and efficiently, then your nervous system starts to take a toll. And of course, the dehydration and the high acidity can wreak havoc on your voice as well. And so I'm not a fan of animal products. My husband eats animal foods, so I'm not like anti people. So I don't want anybody to take offense to what I'm saying. But what I always recommend to him whenever he asks me for advice is I recommend that he focus on eating fish because fish is pretty high in water content. It's easier to digest than meats and poultry. It's just easier on the body. And so that's what I always recommend to people who don't want to go vegan, And that's your right. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do with their lives. You got to figure out what works for you. And so I hope that this was helpful for you. If it was, leave me a comment. Like I said, we're going through a shift. And I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but I think that it's not going to get much easier. And so it's up to us as individuals to get through this period prepared. And so I keep telling myself this is the era of no cheat days. Like I mentioned how I go to restaurants sometimes and I eat, whatever I want and I would even have wine every now and then, which we didn't even talk about alcohol. Talk about dehydrating. Oh my God. You have wine one day, you're paying for it for 3 days afterwards. It's so dehydrating. Just think about how does the doctor sanitize your skin before they give you a shot? They put alcohol on there. What is it that the ladies, we don't want in our skincare products? We don't want alcohol in there because it dries up your skin. It's extremely dehydrating and it does all kinds of things to your hormones when you drink it. So if you are somebody who's dealing with a dysregulated nervous system, look into how you can eliminate alcohol or at least make it a rarity in your life. I cannot recommend that enough. I know that's another difficult thing, just like coffee, but I'm here to offer help. I'm not trying to pander to anybody's vices. And so I hope that this helped you. If you have any other suggestions for how to protect and take care of a nervous system, then put it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you would like guidance on your vocal journey, I have courses, I have private community, and I have one-on-one coaching, and I'll put all the links in the description below. So if anything seems interesting to you, check it out. Keep going, everybody, because the world needs your unique voice.